Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, respected audience. I hope that you are all good. I welcome you in my new video. From today, I'm starting William Shakespeare in parts. So today is the first part related to William Shakespeare, the greatest English writer. In this today's video, I will give you a brief introduction of William Shakespeare, his start of career in London, and his different phases of writing. And then I will conclude my today's lecture. William Shakespeare was born on April 23rd, 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon. By 1592, he was in London as an actor and later as a playwright. People started knowing William Shakespeare by one of the pamphlets written by an already established playwright of London, Robert Greene, one of the university wits. He wrote about Shakespeare that there is an upstart crow, beautified without feathers. So these are basically the jealous remarks of Robert Greene, who was one of the most senior university wits playwright about Shakespeare. 1588 is a remarkable date in the history of England, when England defeated Spanish Armada, and now the English ships were sailing throughout the world, and English nation grew richer. This was the time when English nationalism was growing. That was the start of industry. That was the start of travel. So this was a very rich time to develop culture, and there was a lot of time for entertainment in life. So Shakespeare was so lucky that he was born in such time, the peak of Renaissance in England and the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. Shakespeare was a born poet, a writer of extraordinary genius. So this great young poet was really lucky to have such a great and fertile time for the development of his dramatic and poetic art. Shakespeare related himself with the most well-known and established actors of London. The Lord Chamberlain. They were the world perfect actors. Later on, they established a theatre with the name of the Globe Theatre. Shakespeare worked for Globe Theatre throughout his dramatic career. Now Shakespeare's dramatic writing career, it is divided into four different phases. The first period starts from 1588 and it goes to 1594. This is the start of Shakespeare's writing of drama. So Shakespeare seems to be an artist in the workshop who is learning the craft. The style is immature. There are a lot of word plays, puns, and there is excessive use of rhyme. And a lot of conceits they are there. So Shakespeare at this stage is learning and knowing things more and more. The most important feature of this first phase is a remarkable zest and excitement for life. There is liveliness, there is love for life, there is hope, and there is a great excitement. No doubt there are some tragedies here, but even then, Shakespeare is at the start of his career. We have some great plays written in this phase. Romeo and Juliet, Merchant of Venice, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Richard II, Richard III, King John. They are some of the well-known plays of this first phase. After this, we have the second phase of Shakespeare's writing. It starts from 1594 and it goes to 1600. Now, this is the time of greatest comedies and histories. The greatest comedies and histories are written in this phase. Now, Shakespeare's genius now is reached to full flowering. Shakespeare is now writing with full and perfect ease and felicity. And there is no early crudeness in the style. Now, Shakespeare is not using excessive rhyme, rather, he is using very flexible black verse that is purely of Shakespeare's own. So, there is again a zest of life. The greatest plays written in this phase are Twelfth Night, As You Like It, Much Ado About Nothing, Henry the Fourth and Henry the Fifth. So in this phase, Shakespeare is not the way there is the lack of depth in the first phase. There is no such thing. There is more depth than the earlier plays. So after this, we enter into the third phase of Shakespeare's writing, third period, 1600 to 1608. Now this is the period of the greatest tragedies, not only of English, but of all the languages of the world. Critics declared these great tragedies as the dark comedies. Now Shakespeare's mind is now changed. According to critics, there are some very gloomy shadows that are overwhelming Shakespeare. Most probably the father's death, the son's death, or treachery of friend, or disappointment in love. They have changed Shakespeare's mind. That from writing comedies, he has turned to writing tragedies. So he is seeing the very evil aspect of life, the darker aspect of life, which Shakespeare thinks that the very part of life it is. So he's writing dark tragedies. He's writing such tragedies that are reflecting evil in the world, evil in the man's nature. Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, Othello, and Julius Caesar. These are Shakespeare's the greatest tragedies written in this phase. And remember, they are the greatest creations of the immortal dramatist and immortal poet of the world. In these tragedies, Shakespeare goes down to the depths of the human nature. He goes down to the depths of human life. And he also writes from the depths of his heart. All what a man can do related to evil, that is here. The world, man's actions, they are full of evil. Example, I give you a reference from Hamlet. When Horatio listens from Hamlet that Claudius killed his own brother, King Hamlet, the father of Prince Hamlet, Horatio, he does not believe. And he says that can it be possible that a brother can kill a brother? So Hamlet replies, Horatio, there is something more in this world than lies in your philosophy. I mean, the world is practical. The world is real. The world is evil. Where Brutus, as the most trustworthy friend of Caesar, is the mastermind of the conspiracy, is killing Caesar with his own hand and dagger. Goneril and Regan, they are the daughters of King Lear, but still they are so evil that they are evil even to their own father, who has given who has given them his kingdom. So Shakespeare reflects the evil aspect of life, the evil nature of man. Okay, now we come to the last phase of Shakespeare's writing that starts from 1608 and it goes to 1612. This is the last phase. Now, the plays of this age, they are declared by critics as the dramatic romances. They are full of music, they are full of beautiful descriptions of nature, and they are full of peace. They show the peace of the mind of the writer and tranquility of the spirit. As Shakespeare retired from the busy London life, so he wanted some peace. But like third phase of the great tragedies, Shakespeare's style was at its most mature stage. Now the world's language, everything was like a tie in the hand of this great artist. Shakespeare was now feeling full-fledged freedom with the words, with the style, as the greatest artist and writer of all times. The greatest plays in this age are The Tempest, The Winter's Tale, and Antony and Cleopatra. Shakespeare in this age, especially in Prospero, there's a reference that Prospero at the end of the play, he throws his books, the magical books that were having his magical powers, he throws those books into the sea. It means that now Shakespeare will not write anymore. So most of the critics, they believe that The Tempest is Shakespeare's the last play, because there's a reference where Prospero, he throws his books into the sea. No more magic. So Shakespeare, he has the power and the magic of writing. So there will be no more writing. Shakespeare is now tired. Now he will pass his rest life in peace. Now I conclude my lecture. Shakespeare wrote 37 plays, comedies, histories, and tragedies. But Shakespeare also invented another form of drama, that is tragicomedy. In the classical literature, the classical Romans and Greeks, they believed that a comedy should be a comedy throughout, and a tragedy should be a tragedy throughout. Purely a comedy should be comedy, and so a tragedy should purely be a tragedy. But Shakespeare says no, this is not like life. Life is consisted of both the elements of tragedies and comedies. So why not there should be another form of drama that is more close to life, more realistic, and this is tragicomedy. So you will see that in the darkest tragedies of Shakespeare, there are comic elements. For example, the scene of Cinna the poet, just after the most terrible scene of Julius Caesar, assassination as well as the rebellion. In the same manner, some comic scenes in Macbeth, in Hamlet, they show that life has both elements. In the same manner, in the great comedies like Twelfth Night, there is the tragedy of Malvolio. So life is a blend of both. Then we have Shakespeare's pure tragicomedies, Merchant of Venice, The Tempest. They are the tragicomedies. So in these tragicomedies, Shakespeare proved that this form of drama is closest to life. Shakespeare was an immortal poet. He was an extraordinary writer, dramatist, poet, and he wrote extraordinarily. His style was the greatest. So was his diction. It is said about Shakespeare, especially with reference to the last stage, that his syntax was the syntax of thought rather that of language. So I conclude my lecture on the introduction of Shakespeare in the words of some great English writers. I start with Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson says that Shakespeare was not of an age, but he was for all times. Ben Jonson says that Shakespeare was the soul of the age. Then we have a great English writer and critic, T.S. Eliot. He says, about anyone so great as Shakespeare, it is probable that we can never be right. And if we can never be right, so from now on, from time to time, we must change our opinion of being wrong. In the words of Eliot, Coleridge, A.C. Bradley, and Ben Jonson, and many modern critics, Shakespeare is the greatest English writer. I will conclude my lecture in the words of Shakespeare, and these are the very words that are written on the tombstone of Shakespeare. Basically, these words are written by Shakespeare while praising the beauty of Cleopatra. And the words are, age cannot wither her, nor custom stale her infinite variety. That's all for today in my lecture on the introduction of Shakespeare. Very soon we will meet in the next video. Hope you must have understood and taken benefit from this video. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.